This is Brian, ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is the remake of Francis Ford Coppola's Dementia 13, which I reviewed last week. And this is probably among one of the best remakes ever made. Now keep in mind something though. I didn't say it was one of the best movies ever made, because let's be honest, it's not. It's not even close. But it is very watchable and very entertaining. Though my point is, it's hard to make a good remake because you have to not only bring the essence of the original film into the new film, but do something innovative that differentiates it. And that's probably the biggest problem with remakes, as far as I'm concerned. A lot of the times they either remake the movie verbatim, which is pointless because if it's an exact copy, why should I watch this when I could watch the original? For instance, Gus Van Sant did a shot-for-shot remake of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, which is an interesting idea, but it's not like Gus Van Sant, a talented director, is going to out-direct Alfred Hitchcock, especially in this capacity. So that strikes me as a little pointless and kind of silly, to be totally honest. To this day, I don't get why that movie exists. In any case, what makes Richard LeMay's remake of Dementia 13 so good is that, as I said, it takes everything from the original, moves it forward to the current day, well, closer to the current day I should say, and adds interesting things that weren't in the original movie. For instance, Francis Ford Coppola's original was essentially, I want to say a slasher film, but that's not really the case. It's certainly slasher adjacent though, to be sure. Richard DeLay's movie is entirely supernatural. From the first frame, in fact. Well, maybe not the first, but very close to it. It leads with a hint of mysteries that the original movie just didn't have. And this movie is so the better for it. It follows the plot of the first movie pretty closely, in which case you have John Halloran, who treats his wife with contempt, and she ends up throwing his body overboard, the rowboat they're in. But in this instance, it makes more sense, because first off, they're not in Ireland. The movie takes place in the United States. You're not given an exact location, but it's in this country. And it doesn't take place in a castle. It takes place in a very ornate manor house, but it's not a castle. It's certainly castle-like, but it's clearly not a castle. So in any case, John Halloran is going on the rowboat, and his wife, Louise, catches up to him and joins him. Now, in this instance, he's dressed more casually, which makes sense, and they're already at the Halloran Manor. So it fits. It's just shot more casually, and it works a lot better. Though, what kind of doesn't is that, in this instance, John Halloran is a wife beater. And not only has he beat Louise, he's beat his prior wife as well. So this is kind of not a great wrinkle to add, because it takes entirely the idea that Louise is a gold digger. She's a terrible person. So it makes Billy's wife beating a little less effective as a plot device, because while he is clearly not a great person, she isn't either. So it doesn't justify what he did to her. or what he did to his first wife. But at the same time, as I said, Louise is a terrible person. And the idea that someone would hit her at some point is not exactly above the pale. She's awful. Though she gets into a pretty brutal fight on the rowboat with Billy and throws him overboard. Like in the first movie, she then tells everyone that he left for New York, that type of thing. Soon we meet Gloria Halloran, played by Julia Campanelli, and she plays the mother. And the thing is, I don't think her casting is a great one. Now, that's not to criticize her. I think she's great as an actress, but the problem is she has an air about her that's very forceful and dynamic. So when they seemingly have her talking to her dead daughter, Kathleen, it seems odd. Because as Gloria Campanelli plays the character, she never ever appears particularly vulnerable. She seems, her behavior, they believe that she's essentially losing her mind. But the thing is, she is such a powerful matriarch that even those little diversions aren't enough to make me feel like she's just not all there. If it would have perhaps been more convincing that she was going crazy, it would have worked better. Though Julia Campanelli is so present as an actress, she's almost a force. And therefore, it makes the idea that she's losing her mind based on the way she acts otherwise not terribly convincing. And that's a pity, because she's great. But I don't think the way she plays the role fits the role very well. Though, as I said, this is a very good remake. And another thing I enjoyed about this is that women run in this movie. There are at least 2 instances of our killer, an axe murderer, just like in the first movie, trying to kill women. And these women book. They may trip, but they get up and they haul ass. This is so unusual, at least in most horror movies I watch. And I don't understand why it is. These women just run their asses off when pursued. And that's kind of neat. I'd like to see that. It's not even necessarily that they escape. For instance, Louise, like in the first movie, does not escape the killer. But at least they make an effort to try. So, again, this should not be unusual, but unfortunately it tends to be. As I mentioned earlier, very early in the movie, and you have to pay attention to it or you won't catch it, the movie moves in a very supernatural bent, which, as I also said, works really well. The first movie was not supernatural in the least. It gave the impression of it, but it wasn't. This one is firmly based in the supernatural, and it works really well. Another way it's an improvement upon the first is that the body count is significantly higher. I want to say Brian De Palma so bad. With Francis Ford Coppola's original, if I recall, 2 people died in an hour and 14 minutes. In the remake, I want to say 6 die in less time. I think it runs like an hour and 7 minutes or so, not significantly more than that. So that's promising. As I said, it takes what works with the first movie and just amps it up and makes the plot make a little more sense. It does everything that the first movie does, but it does it better. Though, as I said, this isn't a great movie. It's fun, quite watchable, and I enjoyed it, though by no means is it a great movie. I found it a little soapy for my liking. Some of the casting was kind of odd. For instance, Louise was played by a Latina woman. And in the context of the movie, it comes off mildly offensive. I mean, her husband was terrible, but she was as well. And the fact that there are no other Latino characters in the movie makes that feel a little bit icky. Another thing that differs in the 2017 reboot is that they introduce 3, I want to say hired killers, but they're not quite competent enough for that. So I just want to say toughs, thugs, who Louise has hired to kill. It's not really spelled out. She actually says that she wants to know nothing of the details, but they are clearly there to kill the Halloran family. So Louise can take control of their fortune, which, like in the first movie, is also being given to charity. It's a really fun, effective movie, which really surprised me because when you hear the name Francis Ford Coppola, you more likely would expect the pinnacle of filmmaking, and that's just not where he was at that point in his career. Compared to someone like Richard LeMay, I've only seen one other movie he was involved with, which was a movie called Whirlwind, which was pretty good, but that was a different genre entirely. If you haven't seen Dementia 13, check out the 1963 movie first. As I said, about an hour and 14 minutes or so, and then watch the 2017 remake, and it gives the 2017 movie added depth. So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. If you agree, disagree, let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.